did not realize how far behind we are on the syllabus until I looked at it this morning. I think we're supposed to be in our second day of Henry IV, Part 1. And we won't finish As You Like It today, more than likely. We'll finish it on Thursday, definitely, and then I'll probably make an adjustment to the syllabus. I've not put up a quiz yet, because I wanted to at least get through Act 3 before I put up any kind of quiz over As You Like It. So my plan for today is to get through Act 3. Thursday we'll finish it, and then we'll start Henry IV, Part 1 a week from today. Probably we'll drop Henry V, so that we'll do 2 comedies, 2 histories, 2 tragedies, and hopefully a romance, if we can finish with The Tempest. So we left off, if I remember, Act 1, is that right? Act 1, Scene 2? We finished Act 1, Scene 2. That's right. I was going to make a comment about the very last couple of lines there where LeBeau talks about Celia and Rosaline and says, LeBeau and Orlando are talking, and we're told line 263, back at 262. Neither his daughter, if we judge by manners, but yet indeed the taller is his daughter. Okay? That's talking about Celia. And yet, when we get to Act 3, Scene 3, line 113, Rosaline says, back up a little bit, 112, Rosaline says, were it not better because that I am more than common tall? That implies she's taller than Celia. So she's going to dress as a man, Celia's going to dress as a woman as they go off into the woods and such. And you've got a footnote somewhere in either this line in Act 1, Scene 2, or in Act 1, Scene 3. There's a footnote that talks about there's a discrepancy there. There is a problem, okay? LeBeau goes on and says, Duke Frederick has taken displeasure with Rosaline and has essentially kicked her out of the court. She has, I think it is 10 or 12 days to leave, okay? And he finishes, line 274, Sir, fare you well, hereafter in a better world than this. I shall desire more love and knowledge of you. What does he mean, hereafter in a better world than this? I'm trying to see what's his name's gloss says. In better times. That's one possible meaning. What's another one, Zeb?
The afterlife.
Could be. One of the themes, or maybe not themes, maybe just ideas. We could talk about the difference between a theme and idea. In this play is the idea of transformation, or if you want to put it, rebirth, or, and I have a note written in here somewhere, I haven't come back across it yet, it's in Act 4 or 5. Regeneration. In the way it's discussed later in the play, it's almost in a quote-unquote Christian religious sense of moving from, to use the name of a character in here, the old Adam to the new Adam, okay? So, when he says, hereafter in a better world than this, I shall desire more love and knowledge of you. Okay, yeah, Bevington could be entirely right. He could just be talking about in better times. But he might be talking about in a new world, okay? Maybe the hereafter. Maybe he's talking about in the forest. We don't know, per se, okay? So, Act 1, Scene 3. Celia and Rosaline. And notice, again, Rosaline's name can be pronounced Rosalind or Rosalind. And the way we're going to see that is Act 3, I think it is. We're going to see poems that Orlando hangs on trees and such. And he's going to rhyme it with the "ind" and ending in the same poem. Okay? The first 4 lines, I think, have the end rhyme, and the last 4 lines of this poem have the "ind" poem. Okay? So, Rosalind and Celia enter, and they're talking about what Duke Frederick has essentially decreed. And Celia wants to know what's going on, what's wrong. And she asks, is all this for your father? That is, are you upset, are you put out because of what has happened with your father? Notice Rosalind's response. No, some of it is for my child's father. Well, she doesn't have a child. Oh, how full of briars is this working day world. What is she talking about? And you've got a gloss down there. One who might father my children, i.e. Orlando. Okay? That's what she's thinking of. Oh, how full of briars is this working day world. Notice, no gloss for that. What does Rosalind mean? This world is full of what? What are briars?
They get stuck in your clothes.
In hands and skin, they're thorns. Okay? This working day world is full of, meaning the everyday world we inhabit is full of what? Thorns. Pain. I just finished with my 3 intro to lit courses, Sophocles' Oedipus the King. And in the translation we used, the last 2 lines of the entire play go, and I just totally blanked out on them. Now as we keep our watch and wait the final day, count no man happy till he dies, free of pain at last. All joy, all happiness, all blessedness that we experience now, Sophocles says in that play, it's ephemeral, it's fleeting. The only time you're going to be free of pain and have any kind of joy, it's when you're dead. She's getting close to that here, okay? Celia, they are but burrs, cousin. See, a briar and a burr are 2 different things. A burr is the kind of thing that gets stuck in your hair. If you have cats or dogs, they go out in the weeds and stuff, and they come back and they're all just coated with them. They get stuck in sweaters like this and are pain to get out. Those, she says, those burrs are what? Thrown upon thee in holiday foolery. If we walk not in the trodden paths, our very petticoats will catch them. If we don't walk on the safe and narrow, the beaten paths, the roadways, the sidewalks, the highways, she said, yeah, then all kinds of stuff's going to stick to us. That's all a metaphor for what? Essentially, be virtuous. If you're not virtuous, something is going to stick to you. It's why Hamlet tells Ophelia, get thee to a nunnery. Why? Because if you don't, you'll become a breeder of maggots. And he's equating their humanity with maggots, okay? And you've got a bunch of glosses. You are making too much of minor difficulty if one catches such burrs on one's clothes constantly, if one strays from the path of propriety, okay? To be virtuous is to be proper, all right? So, she said, I'm not worried about burrs. I can shake those off my coat. These burrs, they're in my heart. In other words, she's been stuck. What's the image, since we're coming up on, not Halloween's, Valentine's Day tomorrow, in one sense they're kind of the same. What's the image that's typically used? Arrow through the heart, okay? Burrs. Celia, hem them away. Cut them off. Repair the fabric. Rosaline, I would try, if I could, him, that's what she means, and have him. What's the is to catch his attention. Come, wrestle with thy affections. And then Rosaline's going to put on that. Oh, they take the part of a better wrestler than myself. She'd like to wrestle with Orlando. Her affections are in Orlando, in other words. Okay? So, Celia kind of keeps like, you're beginning to see here an example of this. Stichomythia, Stichomythia, which is prominent in ancient Greek poetry and drama, where you have alternating lines, okay, spoken by two different characters. And they're just like machine gun, verbal sparring, okay? This isn't quite that. It's close. We're going to see it when we get to Rosaline as Ganymede talking with Orlando. They're going to go rat-a-tat-tat back and forth. The greatest example of it in Shakespeare is in Much Ado About Nothing. Watch the version with Kenneth Branagh and his then wife, Emma Thompson, okay? He's playing Benedict, she's playing Beatrice. They both love each other, but they don't know it. And they just go at each other hammer and tongs. And it's usually well done, hilarious. The Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson one is superb. So, Celia says, line 26, is it possible on such a sudden you should fall into so strong a liking with old Sir Rowland's youngest son? How can this be? You don't know him. You've barely met him. You've talked to him for maybe 5 minutes. She says, the Duke, my father, loved his father dearly. So Celia hears that and is like, what? Doth it therefore ensue that you should love his son dearly? Because your father loved his father, ergo you must love him? By this kind of chase, I should hate him. You know, my father hated his father, but I don't hate him. No, don't hate him. No, don't hate him, not for my sake. Okay? So, Frederick comes in with his train of followers. And he looks to Rosaline and says, Mistress, dispatch you with your safest haste and get you from our court. Now, LeBeau, go back for a second, has told Orlando that this is happening. She doesn't know it yet. She's about to. Me, uncle? You, cousin. Notice, does he mean cousin literally? No, it's just a term of family endearment. Okay? Well, maybe not so endearing here, but within these 10 days, if that thou be found so near our public court as 20 miles, thou diest for it. If you're within a 20-mile radius of the court. Why? What is the fault that you find in me? If with myself I hold intelligence or have acquaintance with mine own desires, if that I do not dream or be not frantic, as I do trust I am not, then, dear uncle, never so much as in a thought unborn did I offend your highness. Never so much as in a thought unborn. I've never even thought evil or bad of you, uncle. Thus do all traitors. What's he sound like? We could literally go from this play to the beginning of the 20th century and just start talking about dictators and tyrants. Thus do all dictators and tyrants. They do what? They mistrust everyone. Okay? Thus do all traitors. If their purgation did consist in words, they are as innocent as grace itself. Now that's theological language. As innocent as grace. What is grace? Grace is an unearned, unmerited, unconditional gift of God. That's totally innocent, right? There's nothing tinged in that. Okay? Remember that? The I in the tulip, irresistible grace, if you're a Calvinist. Let it suffice thee that I trust thee not. Notice, does his mistrust have to be based on anything? No, not at all. Yet your mistrust cannot make me a traitor. Just because you don't trust me, she's thinking logically. That doesn't make me a traitor. Tell me whereon the likelihood depends. Tell me what I have done. What does she want? Justification. Proof. Louder.
What are the charges?
Thou art thy father's daughter. There it is. That's enough. People in the 20th century have been in prison for a whole lot less than that. Rosalind. Now she's kind of, here's the line. She's going to step right over it. So was I when your highness took his dukedom. She's just accused him of what? Usurping the throne. So was I when your highness banished him. What's her point? And why did you banish me then? Why didn't you banish me when you banished my father? Treason is not inherited, my lord. Ooh, now there's a deep issue. Treason. Going against the crown. Going against, the rightful order and such. She says, that's not inherited. It must be what? It must be demonstrated. It must be practiced out. Okay? Think of these, and you have a character named Old Adam, and you get this kind of new world, this golden world, this pastoral Edenic world. What else can treason be here? What's the ultimate treason?
Blasphemy.
You're close. Going against God. That's the ultimate treason. She says it cannot be inherited. Big is. I'm not saying this is the case. I'm throwing out a question. Is this Shakespeare throwing out possibly a question regarding quote unquote original sin? In the Western Augustinian notion of original sin being passed on via blood, genetically, inheritance-wise. Okay? Or, if we did derive it from our friends, what's that to me? If we did get treason from our friends, what's that to me? Why? Because of the next half line. My father was no traitor. Ooh. So you took his dukedom by saying he was no traitor.
She's implying he's the traitor.
Bingo. You're the one at fault. One of the issues that runs throughout all of Shakespeare's plays is this notion of who has the right to rule. Okay? In the history plays, we're going to see questioned or introduced the idea that later gets called the divine right of rulership, that God bestows kingship or queenship upon individuals, etc., etc. We're going to see that in Henry IV Part 1 and somewhat in Henry IV Part 2. That's why I usually try to do that entire tetralogy where we see Richard II and what a horrible king he is, but he's still king, how he gets deposed, removed from office, and then that sets into play certain motions. Okay? My father was no matter. Then, good my liege, mistake me not so much to think my poverty is treacherousness, or treacherous. What does she mean by her poverty? Does she mean literal poverty? What's your gloss say? That doesn't say. It could mean that. My lack, my being in need of things. So she tries to butter up her father. Okay? He says, the only reason we let her stay here is because of you. I didn't ask you to have her stay, she says, line 67. It was your pleasure and your own remorse. I was too young at that time to value her. She's saying, we weren't even great friends. I mean, they're cousins, but we weren't even great friends then when you banished her father. But now, years have passed, okay? I know her. If she's a traitor, so am I. Okay? Why? Go back to what Rosalind said. Treason is not inherited, and it doesn't come from being near someone. It doesn't rub off. It's not contagious in that sense. It can be contagious, okay? Don't get me wrong. So she's saying, now that I know Rosalind, you might as well call me a traitor too. We have slept together, we have rose in an instant, we have learned that has gone to school, we have played, we have eaten, and wherever we went coupled and inseparable. Okay? Duke Frederick, she is too subtle for thee. What does that mean?
Crafty.
Louder?
Conniving.
Conniving?
My book says crafty.
Crafty? Okay, what else? What does that say about Celia?
She's not intelligent enough to pick up on it.
He just called his daughter essentially a dummy. You're not bright enough to pick up on her, okay, let me use a very sexist term, on her feminine wiles, on her deceit. Old trope, right? Why are there problems in the world?
Eve.
After all, what is popular folk etymology for the word woman? Woe to man. Popular, there's no truth to it at all, okay? So, she is too subtle for thee, and her smoothness, her very silence, her patience, what? Speak to the people, and they pity her. So notice what speaks. Her smoothness. What's another word for smoothness? Because he doesn't gloss that. Grace. Her bearing, the way she carries herself. Her silence. How can silence speak? Silence can speak very loudly. Okay? And her patience. What's patience? Her enduring, her suffering, her falling down or getting knocked down, getting up, dusting off, pulling the briars and burrs out, and going on. They do what? They speak to the people, and the people pity her. What's he suggesting? This is an image that Shakespeare uses throughout many of his plays. This idea that when the people side with a person, and that person isn't the king or royalty or the leader, you've got the beginnings of an uprising. Okay? Again, it's like Shakespeare read into the mind of the prototypical tyrant and understood exactly how a tyrant thinks and acts. Probably because Shakespeare lived during the reign of a tyrant. Queen Elizabeth was a tyrant. Okay? I mean, she had people executed, had tongues cut out, hands cut off because people wrote and said things she didn't like, kind of against her. So Shakespeare had to walk a very fine line, especially when he writes stuff dealing with monarchs being deposed, like he did with Richard II. So, and they pity her. Thou art a fool. In other words, she's pulled the wool over your eyes, Celia. She robs thee of thy name, and thou wilt show more bright and seem more virtuous when she is gone. What does that mean? I don't watch football anymore. I haven't watched it in decades. The 49ers would look great today if it weren't for Kansas City. That's what it is. If it weren't for the Kansas City Chiefs, the 49ers would be Super Bowl champions, right? They would have played somebody else, but that's the idea. Remove the greatest thing, and the next greatest thing looks pretty good. That's what he's just told Celia. Notice, and she, Celia, will seem more virtuous. Seem is one of those subjunctive verbs that I talked about. Indicates a condition contrary to fact. Notice, you can seem virtuous like you can seem being pregnant. No. Either you are or you aren't, period. Okay? So open not thy lips, firm and irrevocable is my doom, which I have passed upon her. She is banished. Celia, pronounce that sentence then on me, my liege. I cannot live out of her company. Again, you are a fool. Wow. Here's some good parenting for you. All right? Duke and his lords leave. Celia and Rosalind talk back and forth. Celia says, he's banished me too. Rosalind says, no, he hasn't. Celia, what line is it? 95 or so. No, hath not. It's like, Rosalind, did you not just hear what I said? Rosalind lacks in the love which teacheth thee that thou and I am one. Did you not hear that I said, if he banishes you, he banishes me? Shall we be sundered? Shall we part, sweet girl? No. Let my father seek another heir. Therefore devise with me. Notice, who comes up with the plan? Who suggests the plan of going in disguise? It's Celia. It's not Rosalind. How we may fly, whither to go, want to bear with us. Do not seek to take your change upon you, to bear your griefs yourself, and leave me out. For by this heaven, now at our sorrows pale, say what thou canst, I'll go along with thee. In other words, come hell or high water, I'm going to stick with you. Rosalind, whither shall we go? Celia, to seek my uncle in the forest of Arden.
In the previous play, wasn't it an aunt?
Yes. Yep.
Which one was written first? Was this?
I think Midsummer Night's Dream was around 95. This probably has to be after 98 because there's a quotation from Marlowe's Hero. I think it's Marlowe's Hero and Leander, which was first published in 98. And there's an exact quote from it. In fact, there's two references to Marlowe in this play. One of them is possibly to his death, and the other one is that passage from Hero and Leander. So, whither shall we go? Let's go find your father. No, she doesn't say that. She says, to my uncle. Rosalind, what danger we'll be in. Why? Because beauty provoketh thieves sooner than gold. I mean, we're just a couple women out there in the wild, and there's all bad men. Celia, I'll put myself in poor and mean attire, and with a kind of umber smirch my face. So, she's going to dress in rags and foul her face with dirt. But she's still going to be a woman. Okay? She's not going to change her gender by disguise. The like do you, so shall we pass along and never stir assailants. In other words, no one is going to try to rob a couple of poor looking women. Rosalind, maybe this would be better because I'm uncommonly tall. That I did suit me all points like a man. A gallant kirtle axe upon my thigh. In other words, she'll go armed, but she's not going to be dressed like a knight or courtier. A gallant colonel acts upon my thigh, a boar spear in my hand, and in my heart lie there what hidden woman's fear there will. She'll bury, in other words, what fear she has. We'll have a swashing and a martial outside, as many other mannish cowards have. Notice that little dig at kind of courtiers and so-called gallant men who are actually putting on a show that do outface it with their semblances. And we've got lots of characters in Shakespeare plays, male characters, who put on this brave face, and then when danger comes, they hightail it. Okay? What should I call you? I'll have no worse a name than Jove's own page. Therefore call me Ganymede. Ganymede was a young man who assisted Jove. He was also Jove, Zeus, Jupiter, same one, also his lover. Okay? So what are we going to call you? She says, something that has a reference to my state. Aliena or Aliena. Alien. Why? Because she's going to be a foreigner. Kicked out of her own home. She'll be an alien wandering in a strange land. Okay? So, Rosalind says, let's get the clownish fool out of your father's court. Celia, he'll go wherever I tell him to. Who are they talking about? Touchstone. Okay? So, scene 2. Where are we? Now we're in the wood. Now we're in the forest of Arden. Duke Sr., Amiens, and others come in. And Duke Sr. gets a little speech. Now my co-mates and brothers in exile. Co-mates. What does that imply? What's the co imply? With together.
He's not their dictator.
Exactly. He's not Duke. He's not the leader per se. He is the leader. But he's identifying with them. Which is one of the reasons why I really don't want to drop Henry V, because there's a wonderful scene in Henry V just before the big battle at Agincourt, where Henry goes in disguise, young king, and walks among his troops and listens to what they say about the king. And some of them say some not so nice things, and Henry, using a disguised voice, kind of leads them on and trains them back to kind of how they should go. It's a fantastic scene.
The original Undercover Boss.
Yeah, and we may still, I don't know how, try to include it. May have to drop The Tempest, which I don't want to because it's Shakespeare's last play, and Shakespeare, proverbially, of course, to many scholars, breaks his pen. When the magician Prospero breaks his staff and says his magic's done, it's Shakespeare's last play. He moves off to Stratford. Done. It's like he's all written out. Which is one of the reasons why I really want to do it. So, now my co-mates and brothers in exile, hath not old custom made this life more sweet than that of painted pomp? What's he mean by old custom? What's something that's customary? Traditional. Habit. Old custom. They've been there a long time. Okay? And it has made what? This life in exile more sweet than what? That of painted pomp. What's painted pomp? What's played at graduations? Edward Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance. Why? Because that's a big highfalutin ceremony. There's great things being celebrated there. If you ever get a chance, go to London, go to Buckingham Palace, go to not Windsor Court, go to Hampton Court, Henry VIII's palace. It had originally been Archbishop Cranmer's Cardinal Wolsey's, okay? When Wolsey fell out of power, aka was killed, Henry VIII took it and made it his own. You get an idea of the royal pomp and, how's he put it? Painted pomp, okay? in those buildings. Are not these woods more free from peril than the envious court? Notice the dualism, or notice the opposition Shakespeare sets up. Okay? The woods are more free from peril than the, not just court, the envious court. What is the court envious of?
Their freedom,
Possibly.
power.
Power. Court doesn't mean just the city where Frederick now reigns. What does it mean? All the little people scurrying about within the court. I mean, Charles and Camilla and Will and Kate, they all still today have all kinds. Camilla and Kate, ladies in waiting.
They're envious of each other.
What do they want? What does the man at arms down here want that the men of arms up here have?
Power, status.
Power, status, their position. What does a lady in waiting down here want that the one who attends directly to Kate Middleton, future queen, has? Access, power, prestige. Why? Because proximity to power means power. We could stop the royals and we could just stick with the United States and talk about Washington, D.C., because that's the court. Okay? Here, Duke Sr. says, we don't have that kind of problem. Here feel we not the penalty of Adam, the season's difference, as the icy fang and churlish chiding of the winter's wind, which when it bites and blows upon my body, even till I shrink with cold, I smile and say, this is no flattery. These are counselors that feelingly persuade me what I am. Notice, that's a sentence, or excuse me, that's a declaration. It's not a question. He's not saying, here feel we not thee? Notice the intonation. He's saying, here feel we not the penalty of Adam. What's the penalty of Adam? It's Adam's sin that brings about the penalty.
Original sin?
That's the sin that brings about the penalty. What's the penalty?
Oh, death.
That's the judgment. From this moment on, God says back in the garden, the ground will be cursed. You will till it and it will bring up what? Things that have already been mentioned. Briars. And by the sweat of your brow will you work. And to Eve, he says, you will deliver and you will have pain in childbirth. Implication is there wouldn't be pain before then. Okay? Does that mean they don't have to farm and till the ground in the wood in the forest of Arden? Do they just walk around and pluck fruit and it's all just there? No, that's not what he means. Look at the whole passage again. Here feel we not the penalty of Adam, the season's difference, as the icy fang and churlish chiding of the winter's wind, which when it bites and blows upon my body, even till I shrink with cold, I smile and say, this is no flattery. He's not saying we don't feel the penalty of Adam. He's saying here, it's not, what I experience isn't flattery. Here, I'm experiencing the real world, which is telling me what? These are counselors that feelingly persuade me what I am. Well, what is he? He's a man in the midst of hardship. He's a man in the midst of adversity. Okay? Pastoralists, Shakespeare's day, earlier and later, describe the natural world how? There's a great poem by Sir Walter Raleigh, okay? Contemporary of Shakespeare's, died in the Tower of London in the early 1620s, if I remember correctly, who wrote a poem called The shepherds,
Passionate shepherd to his love? Wait.
passionate shepherd to his love. Thank you. I'm thinking of the response. No, it was Marlowe who wrote the passionate shepherd to his love.
The nymphs
Walter
reply-
Raleigh wrote a response.
The nymphs reply to the shepherd.
The nymphs reply, which is very opposite. In Marlowe's poem, the lover says to his beloved, let's go and live out in the country. We'll go to sleep at night listening to the babbling brook. I'll weave a bed of roses for you to sleep on, and we'll make nice, wonderful clothes out of lamb's wool, and blah, 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 blah. Okay? Come live with me and be my love, and we will all these pleasures prove. All the pleasures of the natural world. Walter Raleigh, writing from the Tower of London, where his family lived with him, okay? There were nice rooms in the tower, and then there's the basement of the tower where the tortures took place. Raleigh writes back and says, I will come with you and be your love. When? And he describes what happens when those beautiful summer days out in the nice pastoral countryside turns to winter. When the rivers freeze over and the lambs go away and there's nothing to hide under or shelter under, and there won't be a bed of roses petals, but there will be a bed of rose thorns. When all that's done away with, then I will, okay? He feelingly is persuaded of what he is, a mere man. Because at this point in time, what are kings told? Or queens? What do you know about Henry VIII? Anything?
Killed all of them.
Well, other than killing his wives, some of them. It was the law in Henry VIII's day that when Henry entered a room, people not only had to bow, they had to bow and stay looking at the ground. Unless Henry gave you leave, you could have your head lopped off for looking at him. Why? Divine right. He was God's appointed ruler. You don't look at him. Notice, go back to the Old Testament. The Israelites, after Moses descends from Mount Sinai, they don't look at Moses face to face. He has a veil. Why? Because he's spoken directly with God. The king is king directly by God's authority. All right? Elizabeth wasn't much better, by the way, in terms of that mentality. So, that feelingly persuade me what I am. Sweet are the uses of adversity. What does he mean, uses? Keep going. How does adversity teach us?
Through experience.
Keep going. What do you do with adversity? You got two options.
Persevere or give up.
Bingo. You overcome or you succumb. I was trying to think of something that rhymed or close, but that's pretty good. You either overcome or you go under. That's it. Adversity, notice he says, teaches us. Sweet are the uses of adversity, which, like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in its head, and there's a footnote about a mythic thing there. In this our life, exempt from public haunt, that is, from the public eyeing us, as well as from being in public, what? Finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. This our life, where? Here in Arden. What do they find to teach them? What is called general revelation. General revelation is the natural world and what it speaks about, God, reality, etc. It's not opposed to. It's the opposite of specific revelation. Scripture, if you want, okay? Notice, we find tongues in trees. That is, trees teach us. We find books in the running brooks, and sermons in stones. You know, Jesus, when he goes into Jerusalem, what do the people do? They call out, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Some of the Pharisees are like, come on, man. Listen to what, and he says, if they were to shut up, anybody know the rest of the passage? Even these stones would speak. I think Shakespeare has that probably in the back of his mind. Shakespeare was very familiar with the Bible, the Geneva version of the Bible, okay, not the King James. So, Amiens says, I would not change it. And what he means by that is, I wouldn't exchange this life here for life back in the court. Happy is your grace that can translate the stubbornness of fortune into so quiet and so sweet a style. What does he mean by translate? I mean, there is the literal meaning, taking something from one language to another. He's taking the language of rocks, trees, brooks, and translating that into something that is beneficial for me. Notice what he's not doing. He's not complaining. He doesn't say, oh, if only we could get back to the court. Okay? So, Duke Sr. says, let's go kill some deer. Okay? He wants some venison. First Lord says, the melancholy Jaques grieves at that, and in that kind swears you do more usurp than doth your brother that hath banished you. And what has that First Lord just done? He's equated Duke Sr. with his brother. Your brother usurped your position in the court. Guess what you've done? You've usurped the deer's position in this wood. There's one slight difference, though. Did Duke Sr. have any choice in it? No, he was banished to the wood, okay? And so he goes on and talks about how Jaques found a deer that was wounded and such and cries over it and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So the First Lord goes on after Duke Sr. asks, what did he say? Did he moralize on the spectacle? That is, did Jaques look at this wounded deer and draw a moral from it, like Aesop does with all of his fables? He says, yes, he did. And he goes on and talks about it. And then I want to pick up with line 56. The First Lord says, wherefore do you look upon that poor and broken bankrupt there? He's quoting Jaques. Thus most invectively he pierceth through the body of the country, city, court, yea, and of this our life. That is, by looking at the wounded deer, he anatomizes the problems of the world. Notice, he pierces through the body, the state of the country, where they are, the city, the court is a subset of the city, yea, and of this our life, swearing that we are mere usurpers, tyrants, and what's worse, to fright the animals and to kill them up in their assigned and native dwelling place. Arden belongs to the animals. And what have we done? I mean, if you're a, I have to watch my language. If you're really a sincere environmentalist, you got to look at something like this and go, right on. And there are eco-terrorists, I had a relative who was one, who would go to extreme lengths to support the environment. He's saying, we're all of us these things. Why? Because every city is built where? On land that once was originally wild. Okay? So whether you're off in the forest or in the city, you're still usurping. So Dick Sr. says, did you leave him to this contemplation? He says, yeah, I did. I left him. He was weeping and whatever. Okay? 2-2, not going to say anything about other than Duke Frederick finds out his daughter has left. Okay? And he sends to find Orlando's brother. 2-3, Orlando comes in. Okay? We're in front of Oliver's house. We're back in the court again, as we were in 2-2. And Adam comes in with Orlando. And Adam says, line 12, I'm skipping several lines. Your virtues, gentle master, are sanctified and holy traitors to you. How can your virtues be traitors? Oh, what a world is this when what is comely envenoms him that bears it. Back up. So, Adam, back up. Line 3. Adam asks, oh, you memory of old Sir Roland. And what he means by that is, you're the spitting image of your father. I see you, I think of your father. Why, what make you here? Why are you virtuous? Why do people love you? And wherefore are you gentle, strong, and valiant? Why would you be so fond to overcome the bonny prizer of the humorous Duke? In other words, what got into your mind? Why did you challenge Charles? You had to know, that was going to offend the Duke. Your praise has come too swiftly home before you. In other words, he's saying, and all the people are now out there going, Orlando, Orlando, Orlando. Know you not, master, to some kind of men their graces serve them, but as enemies, that is, their graces, their virtues, their traits, their characteristics, their abilities, actually undermine them. Orlando, what's the matter? He doesn't know what old Adam's talking about. He says, oh, unhappy youth, come not within these doors, within this roof. The enemy of all your graces lives, your brother. No, brother. Notice, yet the son, no, not the son. I will not call him son of him I was about to call his father. What's Adam saying about Oliver?
He's not acting like his father's son.
He says, Orlando, you are the memory of your father. You are like Duke Sir Roland come back to life. Oliver, however, is the antitype of that. He's the opposite. No, this night he means to burn the lodging where you used to lie and you within it. Your brother's going to kill you. And if he fails that, then he'll find other means to cut you off. In other words, he's put a hit on you. Why? Whither, Adam, wouldst thou have me go? No matter whither, so you come not. I don't care where. Just don't come in here. Okay? What, wouldst thou have me beg and go and beg my food? Or with a base and boisterous sword, enforce a thievish living on the common road? So, you want me to be a beggar? You want me to be a highway robber? When service should in my old limbs lie lame, and unregarded age in corners thrown. Take that, and he that doth the ravens feed. Who's the he that doth the ravens feed? God. Yea, providently caters for the sparrow. Christ says you're more important than the birds, and yet a sparrow does not fall that God does not know. Be comfort to my age. Orlando, comfort me. And what does he do? He gives him the gold he's been saving up for years. The gold he has earned as servant to Sir Roland and then to Oliver. All this I give you, let me be your servant, though I look old, yet I am strong and lusty. For in my youth I never did apply hot and rebellious liquors in my blood, nor did not with unbashful forehead woo the means of weakness and debility. Probably means he didn't catch any kind of venereal disease. Therefore my age is as a lusty winter, frosty but kindly. Let me go with you. I'll do the service of a younger man in all your business and necessities. So old Adam wants to transfer allegiance from Oliver to Orlando. O good old man, how well in thee appears the constant service of the antique world. Antique, modern English, was pronounced antic in Shakespeare's day, so that it can be punned with A-N-T-I-C. Okay? What's he saying? You're like a good old Roman. When service sweat for duty, not for need. That is, when service was performed out of duty to one's Lord, not for gain, not for some kind of employment. And having that to do choke their service up even with the having. Having that, having what? Duty. Okay? Because he's comparing these times with that kind of service. These times, what? None will sweat but for promotion. I'll do this for you if you bump me up a few levels in the social stratus. That's not you, Adam. Poor old man, he says, thou prunest a rotten tree. That is, you're hitching your cart to my wagon. And my wagon's what? It's only got 3 wheels, man. It's going nowhere. Adam, you shouldn't serve me. That cannot so much as a blossom yield in lieu of all thy pains and husbandry. But come on, let's go anyways. We'll go along together, and ere we have thy youthful wages spent, we'll light upon some settled, low. What's the next word? How's the next word pronounced?
Content.
Is it content or content? Notice, how you pronounce the word determines what the meaning of the word is. Content versus content. Content means to be satisfied. Content means the stuff in something, the guts, the matter, okay? We'll light upon some settled low content or content. It can be both. Some settled low content can mean a little shack. Some settled low content can mean we'll be content with whatever happens. It'll be low. Humility is what he's emphasizing. Master, go on, I will follow thee to the last gasp with truth and loyalty. Okay? From 17 years till now, almost 80, here lived I. So he's nearly 80, and he's been serving Sir Roland and Oliver that long. He says, fortune cannot recompense me better than to die well and not my master's debtor. Not in debt to my master. Okay? 2:4. We're in Forest of Arden now. Rosalind comes in, dressed as Ganymede. Celia comes in, dressed as Aliena. And Touchstone comes in. So, bear in mind again, you probably have a young boy, maybe 12, to a young man up to maybe 19 or 20, playing the part of Rosaline, who's now playing the part of a boy. So, boy playing girl playing boy, who then is going to change that again, okay? So they come in, and Rosaline says, "O Jupiter, how weary are my spirits." Why does she say, "O Jupiter"? Because she's Ganymede. And Jupiter would be the one. Jupiter is just another name for Jove, which is another name for Zeus. okay? King of the gods. But it could also be that Aliena is kind of her Jove to her, right? So, touchstone. So, Rosalind. O Jupiter, how weary are my spirits. Now, how can your spirits be weary? Have you ever done something again and again and again? You're trying to achieve something and you just can't get it right. And you finally say, how the hell with it? And give up. That's where she is. Okay? Her spirits are worn out. She is exhausted. Not physically necessarily. Because look at touchstone. I care not for my spirits if my legs were not weary. She's talking about something internal. He's like dragging. Okay? I could find in my heart to disgrace my man's apparel and to cry like a woman. Notice what that tells us. Touchstone is in on the disguises. He knows who Ganymede really is and such. Okay? Touchstone. Celia says, I pray you bear with me. I cannot go no further. I gotta sit down. Okay? Notice that, by the way. I cannot go no further. What has Shakespeare just done? He's just violated one of the primary, rules of English teachers throughout American secondary schools. Why are double negatives bad?
Because they contradict each other, I guess?
Nope.
It's not simple. You could have just said it more simply.
Nope. It comes from mathematics. A writer of a grammar textbook, a bishop, in the 19th century, was the first one to promulgate the rule that you cannot use a double negative. Why? Because -2 times -2 equals what? Positive 4. They cancel each other out, in other words. In mathematics, language isn't math. Shakespeare actually has, and so does Chaucer, by the way, triple negatives. Why I cannot go no further. It's emphatic. I'm sitting down. You guys can go on. Okay? Touchstone. For my part, I had rather bear with you than bear you. Walk along with you than pick you up and carry you. Yet, that's one possible meaning. There is another one. Yet I should bear no cross if I did bear you. Carrying you, what's the old song from the Bill Withers song? He ain't heavy, he's my brother. Okay? I could bear you without any problem. No cross, no burden. For I think you have no money in your purse. Okay? And you've got a gloss there for line 11. Cross, burden. Coin having on it a figure of a cross. That's why he makes the comment about, I think you have no money in your purse. Okay? So, we talk about being in the forest of Arden. We see Corin and Silvius. We're going to skip a lot of that. Corin's an old shepherd. Silvius is a young shepherd. Who do we meet, a few pages, that Silvius is in love with? He's a shepherd. He meets a shepherdess, or we're going to meet a shepherdess named Phoebe. Okay? Corin is an old guy. He's been in love before. And he's trying to guide Silvius, trying to direct him, essentially. And so they overhear this conversation between Silvius and Corin. In line 42, Rosalind says, Alas, poor shepherd, searching of thy wound, I have by hard adventure found mine own. That is, he has been digging inside. He's doing some self-examination, and that's caused her what? To realize her own wound. What is her wound? She's already madly in love with Orlando. Okay? Touchstone. And mine. And he goes on and talks about being in love. From 44 to 53, and you got a lot of footnotes down there, because Touchstone uses the language of a lover, but he mixes it all up. He's a fool, remember. A jester. What does a jester do? He pokes fun at people. So he pokes fun at all the Petrarchan, named after the Italian poet Petrarch, throw an A-N on it. He makes fun of all the Petrarchan idioms of love. You know, that the beloved's smile is like a ray of sunshine, and the beloved's frown causes hurricanes and sighs and tempests, etc., etc. But what he does when he talks about, he had been in love with a Jane Smile, and I remember the kissing of her battler and the cow's dugs that her pretty chapped hands had milked. So he kisses the cow's teats that she had milked. Why? Because she touched it. He just wants to touch something she touched. Okay? And I remember the wooing of a peas cod, a pod of peas, instead of her, from whom I took 2 cods, and giving her them again, said with weeping tears, "Wear these." He gives her 2 peas like jewels. He's totally belittling what? The state of being in love. Because lovers do silly things. Rosaline, thou speakst wiser than thou art ware of. That's really close to what Titania says to Bottom when she says, "Thou art more wise than thou art beautiful." When he talks about love and reason not going hand in hand. Touchstone, "Nay, I shall ne'er beware of mine own wit till I break my shins against it." Okay? So, Corin and Rosaline then talk a little bit. We're going to skip some. And he says, line 76, because they're asking for a place to stay. Okay? He says, "I can't let you stay at my master's." Why? "My master is of churlish disposition." A churl is the lowest person in society. The person who is tied to the land. Ditch digger today. Okay? And little Rex thinks to find the way to heaven by doing deeds of hospitality. He considers there to be little likelihood to find the way to heaven by doing what? Good deeds, good works. Okay? So, he's of, and notice, Corin says he's of a churlish disposition. He's equating churlishness, and your gloss tells you miserly, with not doing good works. Because good works requires what? From the person doing them.
Generosity.
Bingo. Even if it's not generosity of the wallet, it's generosity of what? Self. It's really easy, as an example. It's really easy to stop and help somebody with a flat tire when you don't have anything else to do. It's a lot harder when you're trying to make your way to an appointment or something. Because then what? That stopping and helping becomes a sacrifice. The other time it's not really, because you don't have anything else going on. Okay? Shakespeare just gets this little zinger in there. So, he says, oh, and besides, his farm essentially, it's all for sale now. There's nothing for you to eat and such. Okay? So, Act 2, Scene 5. I'm trying to get us 908 through Scene 3. We hear Amiens come in. We hear Amiens singing. Songs are important in Shakespeare. We have a lot of plays where there are characters who sing songs. The other most famous one probably being The Tempest. So, Amiens comes in singing. What's he singing about? Under the greenwood tree, who loves to lie with me and sing his merry, and turn his merry note. Love songs, right? Jaques comes in. More. I want more. I'll make you melancholy. What's it mean to be melancholy?
To be sad, down.
Okay. 90% there.
Specifically to be in the state of having a specific distribution of your four humors that make you
Yeah,
have
that's,
the condition of melancholy.
that's true. But what does it mean to be melancholic? Is being more than just sad and down.
Kind of reminiscent.
There's a ruminating, there's a cognitive aspect to it. It's sad and down and meditating on the sadness and downness of life. And it's kind of a spiral. You do it long enough, and melancholy ends up with the black humors. It can lead to depression and ultimately suicide, okay? It'll make you melancholy. Jaques, I thank you pretty more. I can suck melancholy out of a song as a weasel sucks eggs. In other words, I can take anything and make it melancholic. Just as Duke Sr. can look at trees and get tongues, look at brooks or hear brooks and get sermons, and look at stones and get books, actually books from brooks, sermons from stones. Jaques can take a simple love song and turn it into something really depressing. Why?
Because he himself is sad.
Okay, true. Why else? Love can lead where? Two directions, right? Fulfillment or sorrow. Major theme in Western literature. It's called the Liebestod. Love, death. Guy in the 1940s. His name is escaping me. Wrote a book called Love in the Western World. And it's all about the theme of passionate romantic love in Western literature. Goes all the way back to the Aeneid by Virgil, maybe even earlier, but that's the beginning one I'm thinking of, where you have the characters of Dido and Aeneas. Okay? And then you have Antony and Cleopatra, Tristan and Isolde, and Lot mixed in there kind of, Romeo and Juliet, Lancelot and Guinevere, Dante's Paolo and Francesca, real people. Okay? What characterizes all these love affairs? The death is involved in every one of them. Okay? So sadness, love is tinged with that, or the romantic love affairs are tinged with that. Okay? So they go back and forth, and I'm going to skip a bunch. 2-6, Orlando and Adam come in. Adam says, I'm done, we got to stop. Orlando says, come on, Adam, suck it up. You can go a little bit farther, live a little, etc. He picks him up and carries him. 2-7. We're back with Duke Sr. and his lords, okay? And they're talking about Jaques, and Duke Sr. says, I think he be transformed into a beast, for I can nowhere find him like a man. Jaques comes in. A fool! A fool! I met a fool in the forest. A motley fool, because he's dressed in motley. Think of the Harlequin image, okay? Not Deadpool, the Harley Quinn, but a miserable world. As I do live by food, I met a fool who laid him down and basked him in the sun and railed on Lady Fortune, etc., okay? And he goes on and talks about what the fool said. Duke Sr. asks, who's the fool? Oh, he's a worthy fool. Duke Sr., when Jaques asks or says, oh, that I were a fool, I am ambitious for a motley coat. Why? Why does he want to be a fool? So what does Jaques do around everybody else? He satirizes. He ridicules. There's a difference between ridicule and satire. Ridicule is just making fun of, just tearing down. Satire tears down build. Satire tears a person down or points out their folly so that they can transform themselves, reform, so that they would purge the idiocy and start acting properly, in their right mind, so to speak. He now wants a fool's motley so he can say whatever the damn well he pleases. Because fools, professional fools, and they're quote unquote professional, they have license to say whatever they want. Literal license, like a license. Not one that they carried, but they were licensed by the king, duke, whatever. Okay? Duke Senior, thou shalt have one. Oh, it is my only suit. Provided you weed your better judgments of all opinion that grows rank in them, that I am wise. That is, don't think I'm wise. I must have liberty with all, as large a charter as the wind, to blow on whom I please, for so fools have. In other words, Duke Senior, if you're going to allow me this, what's he saying? Be ready. I'm not going to hold back. And they that are most galled with my folly, they most must laugh. And why? He asks. The why is plain. He that a fool doth very wisely hit, doth very foolishly, although he smart, not to seem senseless of the bob. Meaning, if the fool says something and you take offense at it, what's happened? The fool has proven your idiocy. If the fool says something about you and you act totally oblivious, then the fool hasn't hit you. The fool hasn't exposed your folly. If not, the wise man's folly is anatomized, even by the squandering glances of the fool. Give me my motley. Give me a leave to speak my mind, and I will through and through cleanse the foul body of the infected world. In other words, I will be a purgation. I will be a physic to the infected world if they will patiently receive my medicine. He's saying, I could heal the world of its foolishness, but they have to heed, they have to pay attention, okay? Duke Senior, fie on thee. I can tell what thou wouldst do. What? What do you think I would do? Most mischievous foul sin in chiding sin. You would sin in what? In pretending to chide sin. No, for thou thyself hast been a libertine, as sensual as the brutish sting itself. Brutish sting, your gloss tells you, carnal sin. I think it means original sting, going back to the first sin. And all the embossed sores and headed evils that thou with license of free foot hast caught, which thou disgorge into the general world. In other words, no, Jaques. Why? He's kind of saying, you're the chief sinner. And you're going to expunge, as it were, your sin off onto the world. Who cries out on pride that can therein tax any private party? Who calls out pride, he says, that can tax any private party? What does he mean? We're all guilty of pride. Doth it not flow, that is pride, as hugely as the sea, till that the weary very means do ebb? What woman in the city do I name? When that I say, the city woman bears the cost of princes on unworthy shoulders. Notice he's saying, I'm not blaming any particular woman. All women, he's saying, have this. Notice, they bear the cost of princes on unworthy shoulders. What the hell is he talking about? Go to London today. Go look at the royals and how the royals live. Go to D.C. And you can go literally 10 minutes from the White House. you could probably go 5 minutes from the White House and see people living in utter squalor. You can go 10 minutes from Buckingham Palace and see people living on the street. Now you can actually go 5 minutes because you can go to St. James Park right across the street and see people living in the park when they're not being rousted by the cops. Okay? Who can come in and say that I mean her when such a one as she, such as her neighbor? Or what is he of basest function that says his bravery is not on my cost, thinking I mean him? Notice, the person thinks I mean him, but therein suits his folly to the metal of my speech. In other words, I'm talking in generalities, and somebody says, you've addressed me. He's like, no, I didn't. So why does the person think he has been addressed?
Because he's part of the generality he's referring to.
And inner sense of guilt. Okay? Orlando comes in. He tells all of them to stop. Notice Orlando and Adam have been on the stage during this scene. They've been wandering over to the side. Why? Because all the stage is the wood. And Duke Sr. and his people are all over here, and they've got a table just loaded with food. Adam and Orlando are starving. So Orlando comes in, and he threatens to kill anyone who takes another bite. Okay? Duke Sr. says, what would you have? Line 102. Your gentleness shall force more than your force. Move us to gentleness. Sugar will get you farther, he says, than gall. I almost died for food. Sit down, eat. Plenty here. Wait, speak you so gently? I thought all things had been savage here. Why? Because you're not in the city, you're not in the court. This isn't where manners and custom rule. And therefore I acted out a stern commandment. If ever you have looked on better days, 112. If ever been where bells have knolled to church. If ever sat at any good man's feast. If ever from your eyelids wiped a tear. And know what 'tis to pity and be pitied. Let gentleness my strong enforcement be, in the which hope I blush and hide my sword. If you have been what? What do all those ifs imply? Civilized. He says, we have seen better days. And we have with holy bell been knolled to church. And we have sat at good men's feast. We have wiped our eyes of drops that sacred pity hath engendered. Sit, eat. He says, let me take some and bring the food to this poor old man. Okay? So, he leaves. Duke Sr. I know we've only got 3 minutes. Damn. Thou seest we are not all alone, unhappy. This wide and universal theater presents more woeful pageants than the scene wherein we play in. What's Duke Sr. talking about? Everyone, what? Suffers. Everyone endures, this unhappiness. But he uses the language of a stage and theater, and that leads Jaques to give one of Shakespeare's greatest speeches. And we only have 2 minutes, so we can't do all of it. We'll start it, but then we'll come back to it. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his prime plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first the infant mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail and willingly to school. Then the lover sighing like a furnace, Petrarchan image, wildfire blazing, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. Notice some little small detail of her. Then a soldier full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, that means jealous for honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly with good capon line, with eyes severe and beard a formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The sixth age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side. His youthful hose, well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank. Now he's gotten thin. And his big manly voice turning again toward childish treble pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this strange, eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. What does that final description match? I don't mean old age. What modern diagnosis? Dementia. We're going to see that in King Lear. Notice, is second childishness and mere oblivion. The mere oblivion, I don't think just means death. I think it means mere oblivion up here. I don't have any proof of this, okay? This play's written after 98. His father dies in 1601, I think it is. I kind of have a feeling Shakespeare's father was suffering from dementia. And that's how he gets this kind of experience of it, because we see it alluded to there, and then we're going to see it fully fleshed out in the character of King Lear. To me, both my parents died of Alzheimer's. It's perfectly clear Lear has Alzheimer's. He's not mad. He's not crazy. He's not lunatic. He's not there for most of the play. That's the problem. Okay, we didn't get, no, almost got 2, 3. I'll put a quiz up that will go through Act 3, okay? And we've got to finish this on whatever day that is. Thursday, thank you. We'll finish it on Thursday.
Should the Leapus totes be capitalized?
Yeah, I just,
Whatever, no one noticed except me.
yeah, those Germans in there.